Welcome to video four. So I'm going to talk about my first code, and I was going to talk about death and stuff like that. I think I'm going to save that for the next video because, well, we'll see how much time it's going to take me to talk about the code. So when I had my first code, basically, I had just arrived to the hospital. I was actually 20 minutes early to my shift, and I was supposed to meet with my clinical instructor in the cafeteria. So, as soon as I got there, and then my other classmate kind of came in, I don't know, like 5 minutes after me, a code was called. And we're like, oh my god, we don't know what to do. We're supposed to meet our clinical instructor, but then it was like, hey, we never get codes, so this is like an opportunity for us to learn. So we didn't know what to do, so we just went to the code, and we're like, screw it, we're not missing this opportunity to go be asked a couple questions in the cafeteria. So we went to go to do the code. When we got there, thank goodness, our clinical instructor was there too. I guess he heard it, and he just went for it. At that time, there were other students there too, because we were doing the changing shifts. Sorry, it's really late. So there was 4 students. Oh my goodness. We were lining up to like take turns for compressions, and of course I was like the last one in line because we just got there, and I was terrified, but then I was like kind of like keeping my eye open and like listening to what was happening. And it was a shock for me of like how things go on during a code, at least at this hospital, because in my head I have like what movies kind of show you, or like shows, and they make it seem like, oh, everything's like, let's do this, where's the epi, give me the epi, do compressions, bag the person, like they make it seem so hectic. And I was so surprised that when I was involved in my first code that everything was different. It was like just calm. It was just like, hey, when was she admitted? You know, like of course like people are doing compressions and stuff, but it was like cool talking, just normal interaction, you know. There was no rush. They're like, hey, how long has she been coding? Okay, I guess give her an epi. How is her bicard level? Okay. When was she admitted? Has she coded before? It was just crazy how calm everyone was, except for one nurse who was a little frantic. She was like kind of running in and out of the room, and she was, I don't know, she was the only one freaking out. And it got to the point that the nurse who was in charge, he kind of told her, like, you need to calm down. Because she wasn't, like, hysterical or anything. She was just, like, kind of pacing and running and trying to get things done and acting kind of like the movies, like, emergent. Like, it's, like, you know, and I just thought it was very peculiar. Like, yeah, everyone knew it was, like, a serious thing going on, but it was very, like, cool, collected, and I was just like, it's not as scary as they make it seem in the movies and shows. So, it's kind of funny because codes were something I was terrified of, and then after that first experience with the code, which I didn't get to do compressions, they resuscitated her before I got my chance, but after that, I was like, dude, I could do this. It's not even like a stressful situation, really. It's kind of like everyone knows what they're doing. They know their part. They're just trying to get through it and trying to help this person live. So it really like made me feel confident. And then a week later, the same lady coded exactly a week. and that's when I got to do my first set of compressions. It was very calm, very cool, very collected. No problems, no issues. The doctor was really cool. He was kind of like just asking questions and waiting for us to basically get her to get a pulse and stuff like that. When I was doing compressions, I did crack a rib, so that was kind of like, oh, so that's how that feels. Kind of freaked me out a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what people are talking about. It wasn't like crazy how some people make it seem, like they're like, ooh, it's a rib cracked or whatever. It just felt like a little pop. I don't know. But then again, she had compressions done to her, so maybe a lot of her ribs were broken before. I don't know. But when I felt it, it was just a little pop. That night that she coded the second time, we actually had 4 codes that round, which is crazy because before that was her code the week before, and those are the only codes I did, was those 5 codes in total for my whole clinical round. And that night, oh my goodness, those 4 codes wiped me out. Like, my arms were hurting, my shoulder was hurting, my lower back, because you have to like really get in there and like put all your body weight to get like good deep compressions. They did have the machine where it tells you like, oh, go deeper, go faster, good compressions, so that helped a lot. But yeah, you're just like throwing your whole body weight, a lot of lower back. So like the next day I was pretty sore. Yeah, so that messed with me a little bit. Both of the patients ended up passing away. And I thought that I would have been really sensitive about it, but I think in a code, it's a little bit different because you kind of, especially if someone codes multiple times, you kind of expect them like not to hold on too long. So I think you mentally prepare yourself for the death. Like you kind of have an idea of their history and like, you know, if they're teetering or if they'll make it, you know. So the fact that she coded the week before and then she coded twice that night, I was pretty sure that she wasn't gonna make it. So her death didn't come as like a surprise, and I was really able to handle that well. That wasn't the first patient that I saw, I guess, deceased, but it was the first patient that I was working on that did pass away, so it was kind of like there was more of a connection. The first patient that passed away that I saw, he was in ICU, and he expired. They asked me to get the vent from the room and to clean it and just to put it in where we keep the vents in the vent room. And when I went in there, I didn't know he had passed away. They didn't tell me. So I went in there and I'm like, oh wow, maybe they tritated him down or whatever. He wasn't really like moving. They didn't have him like covered up or anything. So I just, at first, walking into the room when I was gowning up and, you know, doing all that stuff, I thought he was still alive. Like, I just thought he was asleep. And then I go in there and I'm like, oh God, what's that smell? And then I look over and he's not moving or breathing. And then a couple guys go in there and they're like, oh, it smells so bad. And like they were making like it known that he was gone, and I was just like, oh, thanks for the warning. So that one was the first person I saw that was deceased, and he had really bad edema, and yeah, it was kind of sad, but like I never knew the patient, and like I didn't work on them, so like it didn't affect me that much. We did have we did help them transport the body to the morgue and put it on the slab and stuff, so that was kind of like it was sad, but like it wasn't like crying sad. It was just like, dang, this really happens, and like it's a part of the job. And it felt a little awkward, but I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna cry, I can't do my job or anything like that. It was just like mainly awkward, especially because our department's right next to the morgue. So it was kind of weird. I do want to talk about like death with a patient that like I did get to know, and like I was more involved, and how that affected me, but I'm gonna wait until the next video because this is already 11 minutes and I want to try to keep it short. So I will see you in the next video, and I'm gonna talk about trach changes and that patient, stuff like that. So keep in touch.